want to welcome you. Thank you for being here. This is the expert learning session on EcoStruxure Power. We're going to have a short introduction. I'll do my best to keep it as short as possible. And then we'll go into the panel discussion. So my hope is that we can have an interactive session. So don't be afraid to make comments, ask questions, disagree, agree. There's a floating microphone right there. You'll get it, you can participate. So let's kind of make it almost a big discussion amongst all of us, okay? Sound good? Let's get started here. So I want to frame up the panel discussion before we get into the details. And really to kick things off, there's these three big trends I want to briefly tackle that are, in my opinion, are driving the need to change how we design, construct, and operate our infrastructure. So since this panel is a little bit more electrical focused, I'll focus a bit more on that domain, but obviously the electrical system doesn't exist in isolation in a building or a plant. It's tightly controlled, connected to process and mechanical control and et cetera. So we'll broaden that out as need be. The first big change is urbanization. I know that's hitting this part of the world quite hard. To me, it looks like the biggest migration of humans in history. It's enormous. I read a few statistics recently that blew my mind. I read that in 2017, almost 60% of the Chinese population was urbanized. And just to put that in context, in 1990, it was 26%. Like, can you imagine, just imagine that. Imagine the scale over just like a 20-year period. It's incredible. I also read that in Indonesia, 2/3 of the people will be in cities, I think, is it maybe this year? No, 2020, by 2020. Once again, just incredible. So humongous urbanization. Of course, that's going to put a lot of pressure on the infrastructure. And we need to be smarter how we do our design, our infrastructure. The second big trend is around this idea of resilience. And this really comes, I think, from climate change, adapting to climate change, dealing with climate change. Still trying to prevent climate change as much as we can, but the reality is that it's hitting us hard. You know, the extreme weather events are increasing, causing a lot of damage. So in one of the sort of things that comes to my mind is the idea of installing microgrids, for example. A way to adapt to these sort of extreme events and still have a stable, local, continuous, high-quality power supply. I know that Schneider is involved in a lot of these projects around the world in areas like Puerto Rico that got hit by a humongous hurricane last year. It was devastating. And then the third one is this greater expectations, I call it. And the idea here is that the idea that people will accept not having 100% uptime is in the past. When you have a digital economy, a digital lifestyle, a digital world, you must have continuous power, good quality power. It's an assumption. You can't imagine not having it. When I'm at home and our house loses power, it does once in a while because of the storms, you know, my family gets I'm the facility manager at home, so I get yelled at. Looking for the power, looking for the Wi-Fi, that sort of thing. So I think this idea of 99.9 and all these things about uptime, no. It's 100%. All the time. Forever. So and that changes how you do design, right? It changes how you do servicing of your equipment, how you think about it, how you operate. So those are the three big trends. So how do we react to these trends? And there's really two areas that we need to focus in. One is we need to change radically how we do design build. The construction sector is terrible productivity-wise. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but versus general manufacturing and other industries, it is absolutely abysmal, horrible productivity. And what makes it worse is that enormous amounts of money, of our money, your money, my money, get poured into these projects at a horrible productivity. And we can't do that. We can't continue to do that if we need to be more careful with our resources. We need to do this mass urbanization. We just can't do this anymore. So we have to change how we do design and construction. And this is going to be a combination of how we change our process, how people work together, the process, and also the tools. So it's a tools, process, and people, it's education as well that needs to come into play. On the operations side, I think the opportunity here is to leverage all of this data that we're starting to get access to as we digitize the infrastructure and just make better decisions, quicker decisions, with that data, so be more effective on the operations side. And I think this is really critical, because if you think about, at least in my experience, a lot of these facilities only have one person on staff, maybe 2 people on staff. Maybe they're young people, maybe they don't have experience. And if they're trying to manage a whole building with every system and all these tenants and all these people all upset, they can't be running around and have no idea what's going on. They'll never, ever be effective, and they'll deliver horrible service to their customers, right? So we need to leverage tools to be much more productive, digital tools, just like we do in our personal lives. And I do want to call out maybe 2 key topics related to this. So one is this idea of green buildings. And I think in the past, maybe this was considered a nice to have, premium, niche sort of thing. And I don't think that's the case anymore. At least it can't be the case anymore. I read a remarkable statistic for Singapore. I was really impressed that by 2030, 80% of the entire building stock is going to be green, I think. And I didn't say construction, but I said the entire building stock. This is a retrofit as well. So this is a remarkable achievement. Probably the leading in the world. I don't know of any other place that's doing this. And even in so that's Singapore. Let's go to India. India is a very complex market, very big market, very wild market. But even in India, and I think it's by maybe 2030 as well, but at least 20% of all construction across that humongous market will be green. And that's an achievement, because right now it's very small pockets, right? So the momentum, you can see the momentum. This is the momentum. This is one day this will be normal. It won't even be a discussion on a panel. It'll just be how we do things. And then eventually we'll get to the carbon neutral buildings, which is the next step. So green buildings is a big one. The other one is cybersecurity. And I wanted to bring this up because I think people either ignore it or are super scared by it. And both of those positions aren't really the right position, right? We need to take some action, but we can't be so scared that we don't do anything. And really, to make sure that the right decisions are being made around cybersecurity, Schneider Electric promotes certain standards. That's the easiest way to figure out if the vendors are providing the right level of security. And there's 2 standards that we focus on that I think are important. One of them is at what we call the control layer, our operational software layer, or the process and building control layer. And it's the 62443 standard. And it's actually a host of standards. It's not a single standard. But that helps secure the network, right? And in addition to the technology side, there's also a very strong, actually more important people process element to this. So working with you on the people side, the training side, the education side, and your processes, plus the technology to do that local securing. So this has to happen. Especially, I think it's irresponsible not to at least do it for new construction. It has to be part of normal new construction. Retrofit, I understand, it's a bit more difficult, but it needs to start, we need to start doing this. I heard about one customer that has some sort of industrial process, and they said that all of their industrial process is totally secure, really secure. That's good, that's really good. And then they realized that, wait a minute, all the power for that process is over on this network, and it's totally unsecured. I was like, uh-oh. So I think we need to think holistically about security now. The other one is around the cloud, and I think sometimes people could get also quite scared about the cloud. And really, actually in my opinion, and ironically, I believe the cloud is more secure. Because you work with a company like Microsoft Azure, which Schneider does. They have so much money and so smart people working on this. This is all they focus on. So the idea that somehow having like the local IT person being better at security than Microsoft Azure is in my opinion, ridiculous. So the cloud technologies actually are secure, but once again, you need to think about standards. And there's a key standard on the cloud side, which I think is the ISO 27000, but there's a key standard there, and we also abide by that. So you do have to be careful. You want to make sure the connections are secure, but cloud is not scary, and there's a lot of value you can leverage from the cloud. The ability to analyze your facility and get recommendations on where problems are, you need the power of the cloud, the raw computing power, the brain. You can't do that locally, even if you have a fancy server. It just doesn't work. It's not technically possible, right? So let's talk about EcoStruxure Power. So this is our response to this, Schneider Electric's response to this. And for EcoStruxure Power, we're really focusing in 2 areas. One is, once again, on this design build area. And the goal here is to help introduce new processes for collaboration, doing, so for example, traditionally you do your design, your specification, it goes out to tender, the vendor comes in very late, and then it's usually multi-vendor, and then the vendors are somehow supposed to all of a sudden work together and produce this beautiful system that magically integrates perfectly. And I've personally been involved in that chain, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work for digital systems at all. It produces a junky system at the end. And the facility operations team does not get what they need. And that's really the core problem here. So what we advocate is a change. So first of all, making the design needs to start from the perspective of what does the facility operations team, as the sort of internal customer, what do they need to do their job to service their customers? What is the business need? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to just monitor in real time? They're trying to do cost allocation to make sure all the energy is appropriately allocated to departments to drive efficiency behaviors. What are they trying to do? And once you have these use cases in mind, then you start with the technical discussion. How to make those use cases real, cost effectively. Lower the CapEx. So we do want to lower that CapEx side. So this comes to the second part of this. You need to change how the process works. No more linear process, it's a collaborative process. Bring the end user with the general contractor, with the design consultant, with the technology specialist, the system technology specialist, not the product specialist, the system technology specialist. Bring them together up front. And this way of working together actually will produce a lower cost project that is more on time with better outcomes. I work with a consultant in New Zealand who swears by this method. And he said what's beautiful about this, because it's the traditional process, he always used to have buffer money built into the project to deal with overruns and unexpected, about 20% buffer, he said. But with this new process, he's able to identify so much risk up front and keep everyone on board and do really smart value engineering, not dumb value engineering, that he doesn't even need that buffer anymore. So for his client, he's reduced their CapEx immediately. So really good value there. And also on the tool side. On the operations side, EcoStruxure Power is focused in really three areas. One is improving safety. We can definitely still improve the safety of our infrastructure. Out on the booth, you might have seen our Master Pack MTZ breaker. It allows you to do reclose using Bluetooth. Not too far away. I mean, people are always scared of security, right? But it's very secure, and it's about 30 feet, so it's not too far away. But you can kind of, you can do that, right? You don't have to be so close, so it's nice. And then we have some medium voltage switchgear. It's called PremSet. It's actually touch safe. The bus bar is touch safe. That's crazy. Don't touch it, actually. But it really is touch safe, actually. It's a miracle sort of installation system. So we're really focused on safety technologies. That's the first one, even more than normal. The second one is this concept of reliability. We focus in two areas. Obviously, we want to prevent unplanned outages, obviously. But the second area is unplanned outages do occur. That's the fact of life. So how do you recover as quick as possible? That's a good focus for us. Speed up that recovery, make it more efficient, more accurate. And the last one, this efficient keyword I have, there's this slides over there. The efficient keyword, there's two areas to this. There is the traditional energy efficiency, which we've been doing for a long time. But I think more importantly in the future, and I was talking actually to Joel about this, but more importantly is the productivity of the people. Making them efficient, making their environment efficient. So they can be better, more productive, they can be more healthy and that sort of thing. I think that's actually more important. That's the bigger opportunity for us. So this is what we focus on EcoStruxure Power. And then how we do this is with this technology stack. So I think a lot of you have seen this. And really my message here is, I don't want to go through the details, but the message here is that we are putting the brain power and the money and the effort into designing a total system that integrates, plug and play, right? So it's low cost to bring everything together. It's all integrated from a systems perspective in terms of analyzing data, gathering information. It's secure, it's flexible. You don't have to buy everything all at once up front. You can pick and choose, but it's still open. So yes, it will work way better with Schneider, absolutely. We spent a lot of money to make sure it works really good, lowest cost with Schneider stuff, absolutely. But it's still open, lots of open protocols. We work all the time with other vendors, constantly in brownfield projects. Very, very normal. And everyone up here has that experience as well. And then I just want to highlight that in the booth, if you do have a chance to go there, if you haven't been there, within that big technology stack, we have a couple key new products that have come out. Very revolutionary, some of them. Oh, I lost the slide already, it's okay. One is the MasterPack MTZ, our new breaker. We have the Power Tag, it's a wireless meter. We have a new relay for the medium voltage side, and we have some new offers on the advisor area where we do the analytics, Power Advisor, Asset Advisor, and on the edge control we have some new versions. So if you're really keen on the details, the technical details, I encourage you after this session, go to the booth, talk to the people that know this stuff a lot better than I do, and get your questions answered. All right? So that's the end of my intro. I talked a little longer than I should have, sorry. I'm going to introduce the panel. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We'll go left to right. So, Joelle. Yeah.
So very good afternoon. My name is Joelle. I'm from the World Green Building Council. Just a very quick word about the council. We are a network of green building councils around the world. So we cover around 70 countries at the moment. We do three things. We rate. So you would have heard of LEED and Green Star. And in India is the IGBC rating system. So we rate green buildings. We educate. So there's a lot of training and education that green building councils do. And as well as World GBC, because we provide a lot of that resource centrally. And the last thing we do is advocate. So we work with local governments, policy side, as well as UNFCCC to advocate for better policies around energy efficiency.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
YJ.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is YJ from Korea. I'm working for one of the Schneider SI, but with the master level. We're starting business from 2002 with Schneider metering devices. So from that time, we starting and installing the metering solution, EMS, SCADA, power automation and stuff. Now we're focusing on, power advisor in the cloud level, and also thinking about the many different items inside of the formal legacy system under IoT, the big name.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, YJ. Lee?
Hello, my name is Lee Wai Ming. I'm the MD of J.M. Pang and CR Private Limited. The company has been around since 1974. Okay, currently right now I'm a 230 kV LEW, one of only 5 in Singapore. And the services that we provide is full service M&E. Thanks.
Thank you. Chris?
Good afternoon, Chris Sia from RCS Engineering. It's a local startup 17 years ago. We are specialized in the data center built environment. We design, we install, we do a bit of maintenance of the data center. David touched on something about the productivity in the construction industry. Yeah, it's a bad apple in the whole basket. I totally agree. We try to innovate, we try to find a way to improve on that, but it's a big struggle because it's a multidisciplinary, we got 20, 30 specialist services, you got different skill set, you got a big task to integrate everything together. I will share a little bit more when we touch on the topic.
Great, thank you, Chris. Excellent. All right, so we're going to start with our first question, which I'm actually going to address to Joelle. So in terms of industry trends like green buildings or challenges we're having, what trends have you seen that really demand a more advanced digital infrastructures in our buildings?
So basically in green building side, I hope these will be the trends, but we are advocating two things. One is around carbon and the other around comfort. So the first one around carbon, we are trying to reduce or rather decarbonize our sector. So we've recently issued a global call that was just launched at GCAS last week, the Global Climate Action Summit in San Francisco. So that looks at, that basically challenges everyone here in the building sector to design new buildings today that are net zero carbon, so that by 2030, all new buildings will be net zero carbon. And by 2050, hopefully, if we start today, we will get there. All buildings will be net zero carbon by 2050. So that's the challenge that we promised at COP21 during the Buildings Day. So that is the kind of trend that we are moving towards around carbon. The other one is around comfort. I don't think we have ever been in a building here or anywhere in Southeast Asia that is comfortable. Are you comfortable right now? It's too cold, right? I mean, especially for the ladies. I mean, the gentlemen in the suit, you're probably, well suited up. You're very comfortable. We are not comfortable in Southeast Asia. The tendency is, too cold, or in temperate climates, too hot, right? Because you overheat your buildings. So that's really going back to that health and well-being aspect and around thermal comfort, around air quality, around noise and acoustics, and around lighting as well, circadian lighting, and how you basically attune to what kind of lighting. I mean, the light is basically shining in our faces, but what kind of lighting would be most productive when you're at home, when you're at work? So I think when we start looking at comfort as a desired outcome, you start to think about, how does all these conversations around digital technology support that? And if we start thinking around the adaptability, the responsiveness of technology and how that can support us in our daily lives, one in terms of reduction of carbon, the other in increasing comfort, I think, we'll probably get there, hopefully.
Hopefully.
I think just another point is that, I think a lot of complexity and complication comes when there's too much technology. So then as people are more and more empowered, we'll start looking at user experience and user interface and design. We've got really distinguished panels of very, very technical people here. But you agree with me, a lot of these systems are, you look at the screen, you have no idea how to decipher that if you are a layperson like me. So I think that is probably where we should be headed next.
Excellent. Any comments from the panel on this topic? Any questions from the audience? Comments? One thing I thought was interesting about this way of thinking, because I mentioned having this use case concept to drive design. So this is what you're talking about, thinking about what is the outcome for the people, the lighting, the comfort, what levels, and to really, that sounds simple. It's not so. It's quite sophisticated to do this right. So you need to have the right sensors, the right backbone technology, the right coordination. So it really does drive the need for these digital systems. But that's where the value is actually, right? Is that true? Yeah.
And this is also a question to Wai Ming as well as YJ. The conversation that we were having just before this, we were saying this is the performance of the building, but actually who defines this performance? It's defined 20 years ago when somebody decided that the metabolic rate of a white man in a suit shall define the metabolic rates of everybody else for the rest of the world. Right? So
Is that true? Oh, wow.
It is actually.
Is that why I'm comfortable?
That's why you're comfortable. So, and I think Wai Ming was talking about safety instead, and so did YJ, and maybe we could hear some of their thoughts.
Okay, the lady is concentrating more on performance. I like to share with you how my experience with digitization. And my primary interest and focus right now is more on the maintainability and operation of electrical assets. Okay, if you were to approach any asset owner right now, okay, and you tell him of course you need to do maintenance, all right. Just a few nights ago, already knew the incident, right? Two generators, one at Samcorp, and then one at Sunoco, tripped off, so must be maintenance related, right? Okay. So the traditional approach has been to shut down. That's very old school thought, and I think most of us have already gone away from that, and concepts have come about talking about condition monitoring. No need to shut down. Okay. So those have already come along a long way, and people are already adopting it. So all right now. So in condition monitoring, okay, with the use of digitalization, you could actually convince the owner without shutting down. Okay, do some measurement, and based on that decision, okay, you try to defer your maintenance. Okay, all right, and digitization have driven this to such an extent that in Singapore anyway, right, more and more asset owners are coming on board, okay, to make use of condition-based monitoring. Rather than, right? And in condition-based monitoring, there are actually three very basic blocks. The first blocks are the sensors. Okay, right? Whether the sensors is embedded inside during the project stage, you specify. All the sensors are already embedded inside, but they are not meant for whatever purpose that you're doing. But out of the box, being embedded inside could actually double up to do something else. For example, our RTD embedded inside dry tap transformers, meant for temperature measurement. Out of the box, it can actually act as a possible sensor for partial discharge. Okay. So this is one area to me that is very exciting, the areas of sensors. And with the prices of sensors dropping and collapsing, okay, you will see its proliferation. Go out to the Schneider's booth and you already seen, right? So I was at the counter and it's a very traditional air insulated switchgear, nothing much, okay, until I saw something small sticking inside. Yeah. That's an embedded temperature sensors, okay? So you see that happening right now, okay? So we want to see the price of sensors collapsing and you see mass adoption. Then the second block diagram, okay, is in online condition monitoring is the very traditional, unglamorous one, the hardware, okay, the electronics to do the data acquisition. Probably the front stage is analog to digital converter, right? And after that, you go into some memory. So it's just the hardware itself. And that one, you also have seen the collapse in prices because of the flash memory. Equipment that used to cost $1 million, yes, okay, have collapsed to 100,000. Okay, so within the price range, even for a humble company like me to invest in. Okay, now the last part, okay, would be the software behind it, the data analytics, the statistical analysis, the data mining. So all three, all right?
So maybe just to complement that, you mentioned the collapse of the cost. So in your mind, there's no reason not to put sensors in this equipment now to do condition. There's no real barrier anymore.
That's right. So then the appeal to consultants like us and asset owners, okay, in the 3 block diagrams, okay, the one that will always be a big stumbling block is that you don't have sensors already embedded inside. Okay, right? So specify sensors in first. And if cost is an issue, all right, the implementation of the hardware to retrieve the data and the huge cost to develop the cloud-based, the whole EcoStruxure to have it can be later. But the first big obstacle is if you don't have the sensors already inside and you need to shut down and retrofit, that's a big stumbling block. Yes. Okay, so that's my experience.
That actually goes well with, I think, our message of this concept of future ready. You need to invest up front, at least in the sensors, to have this nice foundation to work with. Because if you try to do it later, because you think, oh great, this sounds fantastic, yeah, you got to take a shutdown. Maybe it's not even possible. It could be quite costly. So really make that initial investment, because it's going to last 20 years, so might as well do it. Just like when I buy personal electronics, I buy the best, right? What's the point of buying the stuff that's already old? Because it ages so quickly, right? You just buy the best and it lasts at least a few years anyway, sort of thing. Any other comments on this, on the condition monitoring or using these digital technologies to improve the maintenance productivity of the buildings or reliability, that sort of thing? Sure, let's get a mic to you if you don't mind, yeah. Great, thank you.
So you already commented the bottom side is required the sensors, very important. How about Singapore or other Southeast countries? The CT and PT, the Korea is still using the conventional type CT and PT separately. But that kind of sensors very important for the analog signal to connect it to meter or the protection relays. So how about trend is like using CTPT one body like sensors? How about trend in other countries, including the Singapore?
In the areas okay, we are all electrical people here. The surprising statement I make is that it is actually the non-electrical type sensors that are actually more reliable in picking up an electrical problem. That's the first statement. Okay, and to make a judgment call as to whether the asset is okay or not okay, right, based on a single sensor is very, very risky. So you have to go multiple sensors. All right, okay, let's, since you are talking about the switchgear, air insulated switchgear, the CTs and PTs, there are known weak points that often fail. Okay, all right, so that one, okay, my experience, the best sensor for that is sound, ultrasonic. Okay, so basic analogy is that the switchgear is already okay, and you cannot hear it. So if you detect that, then the immediate conclusion is imminent failure because it's already sound. All right. Okay. Then after that, you may actually want to deploy sensors that can actually detect problems that have not manifested itself to impending failure. So maybe early stage cancer. Then the sound-based sensors not effective. All right. Then you may actually use more electrical base. So very common is the high frequency CTs, the UHF CTs, climb around the earth rate. Then you have transient earth voltage. All right. Then what else you can have an antenna. All right. And then you can even problems. You can smell problem, smoke detection. Okay. So in general, okay, multi-sensors approach. And do not use the same type. Okay, and my experience is that the non-electrical has been especially ultrasonic.
Maybe I can give you some insight regarding the conventional CT and BT you just mentioned. It's around 10 years ago, there are very intensive tested was performed in US. The reason was microgrid under IEC 61850 standard. So at that time, one of the project was how we can arrange those kind of the protection discrimination in each level through by the good communication as well. But the target was they are trying to use optical BT and CT because there are large of the benefit from the optical system. The first reason of using optical CT was there is no saturation. And the second reason was let's say if the CT connection is open, maybe your CT will be the blow out. But this is the optical CT, so output is Ethernet communication. It could be copper, it could be fiber optic cables. So the benefit is there is no blow up, even CT is opened, something like that. So nowadays, still 10 years back, back to the real, I can see the many the customer really taking that technology into their utility side. But I can see some the changes in US market. So maybe next 10 years, we may see more optical CT and PT, something different from conventional technologies. That's it.
Thank you, YJ. I'm just going to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit on the design construction side. So maybe this will be for you, Chris, but thinking about that discussion on how we use digital technologies, new ways of thinking, new ways of collaboration to improve the productivity of the design construction process.
Okay, whenever we get a contract, there's always a clause inside the conditions on contract. Time is of the essence, right? So there'll be very heavy penalty if you cannot meet the project delivery time.
Sure, okay.
So time is of the essence, and yet it doesn't mean you can compromise on the quality and the reliability of the system. So we always have to innovate, okay? We rely on technology, which in turn technology will create more innovation, okay? So far, anything that can bring us less integration, less cabling works in the built environment sector, that means everything can be a bit of prefabricated, pre-programmed, and when you go to site, you just plug and hopefully it works.
Yes.
Just like you go to a wireless hotspot. You on your Wi-Fi, that is connected. Amazing. It's so simple. Why can't we do that in the building industry? Just plug and play. Any smartphone, you go to a wireless hotspot, it can be connected, you can go to the internet, unlimited connectivity. Okay. So do we have the infrastructure? Okay. So when I visited the Innovation Summit in Hong Kong last year, I found something called Power Tech.
Power tag, yeah.
Amazing. I don't need to wire any kilowatt sensor, right? I mean, you need to have, because we do a lot of data center, we have a lot of IT rate, power monitoring, consumption kilowatt for energy billing. What amazing product. It's a wireless thing that I just connect it and get the Schneider guy to the pairing, and you got the kilowatt on the BMS display screen almost instantaneously. My goodness. So I was joking with the guy on the booth. Can you give me something maybe in 20 years' time? I don't even need to wire my power cable. Some sort of electronic magnetic pulse or the wave that can send from here and receive my 230 volts at the end of the building. Isn't it amazing when we go completely wireless? I mean, it's just a fanciful talk, but you never know. In 20 years' time, we may not need physical wiring in the building. I mean, 30 years ago when I was at university, we tried to play around with the power socket to do communication. It was horrible because we don't have the technology, right? But now you find that we don't need that. We have a wireless system, Wi-Fi system. It's so convenient, okay? So digitalization is the way to innovate, and it's the way to increase productivity, and it's the way it's happening now. And it's whether you are the early adopter or you are going to be early majority or late majority. It's here, it's not going away. So it's not a matter of choice, it just happened to be here. It's a necessity for all the building moving forward.
One thing that comes to mind when we talk about this is really the need to take all of this digitization. I'm thinking of a panel board now, electrical panel board, switchboard, and really pre-designing all of this so it's done in the panel shop. So when it goes to site, you don't have to spend all this time and effort cabling and fixing stuff and coordinating people. It just comes to site, you plug it in, boom, it's there.
Exactly. We used to have analog voltmeter, analog ammeter, the power factor. Then we get rid of it, we use a digital power meter. Okay? Then you find that we need BMS to monitor the breakers on-off status and individual outgoing. So if you can come up with something which can integrate all this power monitoring, status monitoring, humidity, temperature monitoring, all into a simple dashboard, HMI on the panel. So I can afford to run an internet cable, so connect to my edge control. Everything is like, you can literally see the condition, the trending. It's amazing if you have all this data. And when it does the maintenance, you can do the trending and look at it. Is any overheating? It's all there. The data is all there.
By default.
So, yeah, it's so simple actually. It's a logical progression in the electrical panel, in the electrical power distribution actually, in the industry.
And YJ, do you think that simplifies the on-site integration? The more you can do off-site, I guess.
It's true. Yeah.
Do you guys have experience with that, or?
Because, yeah, sorry for that.
Yeah.
Let's say, the 10 years ago, the customer asking me that, hey, why we need to install the EMS? Why we need to have those kind of very typical design and something we need to use it, we need to take it. So I needed to explain the large of time, what is their solution and architecture, something like that. So at the beginning, they thought it's very complicated system and it's killing them. But once to take it, the digitization and getting this, I don't want to say, enlightened, but once they get, educated well, then this is very simple and it's very helping them to make it visualize and get the meaning very quickly. So the trend is getting in this way. So we are talking about the buildings, so someone talking about the efficiency of the energies. But in terms of the data center, is high availabilities for the data center. And hospital, then they're talking about the human life.
Yes.
But what I want to say is digitization is something hot potato, but anyway, anyhow, is going to be something good way to helping us. So just thinking about 10 years ago, we didn't have the much mobile and those kind of the technologies. But getting back to now, then what did you say? Digitization. Is it that complicated? I don't think so, because we are human, and we're always thinking about the better way to make it simplified and try to give them the meaningful information.
So maybe you're saying there's still a bit of a perception that it's really complex or maybe very expensive, but that's not really correct.
Exactly, but at the end, it's helping us. So I think it's the good opportunity. If there are any SI or some kind of solution provided to the customer that, maybe having difficult system getting through ABB, maybe Honeywell, Schneider, as you said, it's really a pain point. But we need to understand the customer's demand, what they exactly want. So maybe you can, set it out maybe 10 times higher than, maybe other local competitors. But if you really want to do that, then you should have the right to listen for that. So then if you really want to do that, then you need to understand customer demand. So this is something like, how to win, against our I don't say customer, but against our competitors, and bring higher, customer experiences and customer satisfaction.
I was talking to Joel earlier, and I thought you made a really good point. Maybe you can talk about this. So I think sometimes there's a fear or an assumption that if you're going to do digital infrastructure, you just have to do all of it right away. And you're like, whoa, it's humongous investment, right? But you're saying that no, it's not.
I think maybe it's. I think that there are kind of two things here. One is around change management.
Yeah, make people
and people, right? And I think maybe just to touch on what YJ was mentioning about customer demand, and I guess I suppose your customers will be facility managers, will be people operating the building or the data center.
Sure.
Eventually, their jobs will change. I think right now their demand is that they need a simpler system, they need a system that is safe, but perhaps in future, what they will be asking is, how do I reduce my carbon emissions at the operating level, deal with that complexity back end. Tell me how I can fulfill some of the needs that my board is asking me, which is around carbon emissions, because a lot more companies are signing up to that. Tell me what I can do to increase the productivity of my staff through your facility.
Yes.
Because, like we were just saying, right? No matter how much you optimize and reduce your energy consumption, makes it more efficient, it's only 1% of any organization's cost. So we're just creating a lot of fuss around 1%. But in fact, all these 1% has direct impact on 90%. Which is your productivity, your health, your well-being, and all these things that we have, that we are being impacted by the built environment. But if we're able to link these two together, how your 1% can yield that 90%, I think you've got the years of the people in the boardroom, not just the plant room.
I think that's an important point, because when you're putting these digital systems in, you don't want to get bogged down by all this complexity, and that's part of why I advocate always doing system level design versus trying to find the absolute cheapest component vendor by vendor. Because if you try to do that and try to put it all together and then try to support that and then try to upgrade that, it's not going to work. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
It's complicated. It costs a lot of money. The actual OpEx portion, you save maybe a little bit on the CapEx. Maybe I would actually argue no, but anyway. But then the OpEx is huge, and you just lose it all anyway.
So then, just to address the earlier question around change management and how do you, do you change the entire system or part by part? I think the experts here will tell you things are a lot more modular now.
That's true. Yes, absolutely.
And then it's also a changing of the jobs, right? Like, are the facility managers just doing day-to-day operations? Are they going to be elevated to helping their customers or their stakeholders look at a digital strategy for their building?
Yes.
And that's a very, very different type of job that we're looking at.
Yes, big change. So we actually have 30 seconds left, I think, before we get kicked out. Any quick questions? If you want to talk to any of the panelists, feel free to come up after we're done. Of course, we have the Power Domain booth is available somewhere over here. Great.
I have a question, Jolie Chen. So I would like to know the customer demand in latest the demand means that the one of the big large commercial buildings, the each of the system is so totally different. Like a BMS provider is one, another one is writing and control, another one is security. Means that totally different systems, how can their communication? Means the technology point of view. So when I was entrance to the building, the security recognized my mobile phone. Then where is he located the floor, the elevator is fixed. And even though BMS and writing control recognized which room he is working place, that kind of the communication between the system servers and machines, that is available technology now. So how about customer demand? Somebody's requirement, that kind of, I want to, the installation total package, one vendor, or even though different third parties, how can we organize how can unit one simplify the system operation? Yeah. That kind of demand is latest, is coming or not? That kind of, I want to know. How about your opinion?
If I understand correctly, are you saying that it's kind of like consolidating different vendors and then
Yes.
on a single platform, right?
It
And
would be for an existing building, because there's often
and
many
who is
vendors.
demanding for that? Well, I think the more progressive building owners are definitely demanding for that because they want to know how their buildings are performing and how their buildings are responding to the needs of the occupants. But I think maybe a great example is maybe something that David can talk to is what you've done at the Edge.
Yes.
And I thought that was a great example because there's like ton of different
Yes.
vendors in one building, but you provide the architecture, right?
Yes, and that's why it's important when you're in that environment to get together up front and talk technology. Don't wait to the very end and say, oh, here it is. And then also you have to get into the details. I know it's messy, I know it's time consuming. This is why maybe people don't want to do it, but you have to know the details, especially in a multi-vendor situation, because these vendors do not work together. They don't spend money to do plug-and-play integration. So there's going to be extra cost and time to try and put that stuff together. So you need to spend the time. This is also why I advocate, if you're in a construction opportunity, go with a company like Schneider. It doesn't have to be Schneider, I prefer it Schneider. But go with a company like Schneider because we spent a lot of money integrating BMS and power management and lighting control. We do a lot of testing. We work together all over the world to make sure that stuff, when it goes on site, it works. Easy. And it sounds easy, but it's not easy. And you don't want to do that during a project. My goodness, the time crunch on delivering that project, you don't want to do it at that time.
Yeah. Can I just add on to what you say? Ultimately, it got to be easy to start. That's the aim, right? Any system that you are going to implement, it has to be easily, readily to be integratable. It has to be open. I don't need one whole put operation manager. It's only 2 or 3 lines. That's it. It got to be easy to start and reliable.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes.
Very simple.
Otherwise, it can't be supported.
Exactly. Simple.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. And if you want to talk to me, I'll be available after this. So great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.